Hi everyone, Anthony Morganti here. In this video, I'm going to show you how to animate a photo. Specifically, we're going to take this image of the model. We're going to have her perfectly still, but we're going to have the clouds move behind her. Now, if you've purchased my course on Photoshop, Photoshop Unleashed, I'll be adding this video to the course, and you'll be able to download this file so you can work along at home. If you're interested in my Photoshop course, I'll have more information about it in the description below this video. Now, this actually is relatively easy to do, although there are a lot of steps, so you may want to take some notes. What we need to do first is get a selection of our model and put her on her own layer. To do that, get a selection tool. Just hit the W key on your keyboard, and you'll get one of three selection tools. It doesn't matter which one. Just hit that W key, and when you do, at the top, you'll have a button here, Select Subject. Before you click on that button, go to this little downward arrow. Make sure that you're using the cloud to get the selection. You'll get a better selection that way. So click on Select Subject. It will use the cloud to make the selection, and you can see we have marching ants going around the model. Now, what you should do at this point is inspect your selection and to see if you have to modify it, to add to it or subtract from it. You can see over here around her finger, it didn't get all of her finger. Now, I could come over here and use the quick selection tool and have it in minus mode, or leave it right where it is, and I could hold in the Alt or Option key, and it will temporarily switch to minus mode when I hold in that Alt Option key. And I could get a smaller brush by hitting the left bracket key, and then come in here and try to get in here between her finger like that. You can see it over selected, so I need to fix it there. But actually, instead of messing around with all this, what I'm going to do instead is I'm just going to go up to Select and Mask. You can see it didn't get around her finger here, didn't get in her finger over here. Select and Mask will fix this. So we'll click on Select to Mask, Select and Mask. And over here on View, I like to use on Black. There's been a bug in Photoshop forever where when you use the on black view, the opacity, instead of being at 100, is a lot less. And all you need to do to fix it is just jiggle this slider. And now you can see we have 100% opacity, and we could better see where our selection is messed up. Now, to fix it, what we're going to do is use this Refine Edge brush. It's the second brush from the top. It doesn't matter if you have it in plus or minus mode. It doesn't matter at all. And what you'll need to do then is just come in and paint in the areas where it's messed up. And we're going to go here, and you don't have to get a perfect selection. I mean, we don't have to be really tight on her fingers or even on her hair for that matter. It will look fine once the clouds are moving behind her. So just do your best you can and try to make it look the best you can with this brush. Now, once you're satisfied with the brush, and even then you can see I'm not perfect around her fingers here or here. That's actually good enough. What we're going to do, though, is we're going to refine her hair. We're going to click on Refine Hair. And you can see it improved the selection around her hair. It didn't even maybe improve the selection around her fingers a little bit. If you do have to add, like it took away part of her pinky over here, click on this brush, and this is just a regular brush. And then you come in and you could bring back what it took away. And again, you don't really have to be that perfect. So we have our selection. Make sure we're outputting it to a selection and click OK. All right, now we have the same background layer with marching ants going around the model, although the marching ants now are a little more precise. What we need to do is put our model on her own layer. And the easiest way to do that, of course, is to hit Command or Control J. But when you do that, you're actually duplicating her. She'll still be on the bottom layer, and then she'll be all by herself on the top layer. I want to make it so that she's removed from the bottom layer, like we're cutting her right out of that bottom layer and putting her on the top layer. To do that, hit Shift Command J if you have a Mac, Shift Control J if you have a PC. And once you do that, if I turn off the top layer, you can see we cut her out. So she's cut out of this bottom layer. Now, what you need to do now is fill in that area where we cut her out. To do that, we need to get our selection back. To get our selection back, what I do is I'll just click on the background layer so I know I'm on the correct layer, then hold in the Command or Control key and click on the layer that is clipped out. So it's the top layer. Even though it's inactive, it doesn't matter. Just hold that Command or Control key in and click on that top layer. And now we have our selection back. Now we're going to use generative fill to fill in those blank areas. But if I do it now, there'll be a distinguishable line going all around the outline of her body. So what we need to do is we need to expand the selection. To do that, go up to Select, then down to Modify, and then down to Expand. Now, the amount you expand by really depends on the resolution of your image. If you have a really high resolution image, you may have to put a larger number here. If you have a lower resolution, smaller number. So it's kind of a guessing game. I'm going to put 40 in here, and we're going to click OK. And when you do, you'll notice now the selection is a little bit removed from the area where we punched out the model. So we won't get aligned when we use generative fill, which we're going to do now. To use generative fill, go up, click on the generative fill button. We're not going to add any prompt. And by the way, if you don't see the contextual taskbar, just go to Window and make sure it has a check mark next to it. So we're not adding a prompt, and we're just going to click Generate. And what it will do is it will send the image up to Adobe servers, and it will come back with 3 variations. And hopefully one of the variations just shows clouds. And it looks normal. It doesn't look screwed up. You can see down here, there's something poking up in here on this one. Here's another one. That one looks very good. And here's a third one. Either that second one or third one are fine. Let's just go with that second one. All right. So now we've filled her in on this bottom layer. Well, it's actually 2 layers. We have this middle layer and the bottom layer. What we need to do is merge them together. So make sure you're clicked on the middle layer, then hit Command or Control E to merge down. Now we have a single background layer that is just clouds, and we have a single top layer that is the model. So far, so good. We punched our model out. Turn that model off again, or turn that layer off again, and click on the background layer. Now, this is going to move left to right, and as it moves, when it reaches the end, it's going to loop back around and start again. But what will happen is, because the clouds on the far right do not match the clouds on the far left, they'll be aligned when it comes around. So we have to eliminate that line. So what we need to do now is we need to kind of shift everything so that we could see the line, so that we could get rid of it. To shift everything over, we're going to use a specific filter. But before you do that, I strongly recommend that you resize the image, because right now the image is very large. If I go up to Image, down to Image Size, you'll notice that the width of this image is 9,504 pixels. The problem is, when you do try to render the video, if you try to render the video that large, it will come up with an error. If you try to create the GIF, I should say, it will take forever and a day. So what I recommend you do is make this smaller. Now, if you want to try it at 9,504 pixels, by all means, do it. Give it a try. See what happens. Whatever you do, what you do need to do is remember this number. So remember 9,504. All right, jot that down. Now I'm going to change it. I'm going to change it to 2,000. And I'm going to remember that number, 2,000, and we're going to click OK. And it's resizing the entire image. I'll hit Command 0 to fit it to screen. I'll combine minus just 2, make it a little smaller. All right, now I remembered that number, 2,000, right? So now we're going to use that filter I mentioned before. We're going to go up to Filter, Other, Offset. And what we want to do is you want to offset it exactly halfway, and it kind of by default did that. What you could do is, if you had 9,504 in here, instead of getting a calculator, you could just write 9,504, hit the / key, like a division sign, and go 2. So you're dividing it by 2. And actually, Photoshop will know what you're doing. Now, I made this 2,000 pixels, so I'll go 2,000, even though I know it's 1,000, all right? I know I don't need a calculator for that, but I just want to show you. Hit the / key, go to 2, and you can see how it put it right in the middle. So our line is right in the middle. Click OK. So now we could see our scene that we need to get rid of. To get rid of it, use the rectangular marquee tool. The keyboard shortcut for the rectangular marquee tool is the M key. But make sure you're actually using the rectangular marquee tool. Go over here, because the elliptical marquee tool uses the same keyboard shortcut. Then what we're going to do is we're going to get a generous portion of the left side and a generous portion of the right side in our marquee. So we're going to go maybe like this. That will give Photoshop a lot of reference in order to get rid of this line and make it look natural. So we have this rectangular marquee now. We're going to go up to generative fill again. We're again going to not write anything in the prompt, and we're going to click generate. And again, it's going to go up to Adobe servers and do all the heavy lifting up there, and it's going to come back with 3 different variations. And hopefully one of these variations is acceptable. Here's one, not bad. Here's another one, still not bad. And there's a third one. Let's go with that third one. So now we have this image with no seam in it any longer. And if you notice, the clouds on the far right will match up perfectly to the clouds on the far left. So when this moves left to right and loops around, it will look seamless. Now we have these 3 layers again. We need to again merge down this middle layer to that bottom layer. And to do that, hit Command or Control E to do that. All right. Now we need to actually do the offsetting part where we're going to move it over. We're going to make it basically twice as wide as it normally was. And to do that, we're going to hit Command or Control J to duplicate that background layer. Then what we're going to do is we're going to get the Move tool again, hit the V key for the Move tool. It's up here if you need to click on it. And we're going to move it. And before we move it, what I recommend you do is that you go up to View and you go to Show and you make sure that Smart Guides are clicked on. And then go to Snap, make sure that is clicked on, and go to Snap to and make sure that Document Bounds is clicked on. That will just help you move it a little easier. Now we're on this middle layer. That's the layer we're moving. And we can just click on it and start moving it to left. You can see how I can move it around up and down. What I recommend you do is before you start moving it, hold in the Shift key. That will allow you to just move it left and right and won't let you move it up or down. And you'll notice we have those purple lines. Those are the guides. Those smart guides, that's why we have those on. So we're going to keep moving it until it's off the screen. And we don't want to go too far, and we don't want to go too little. So what you do is just keep moving it until you see a purple line, or is it a magenta line? I don't remember. Yeah, there's a line. You can see that line. You can just barely see it, but just make sure you see that line. And that's perfect right there. Okay, so now we have this middle layer way off to the left, and then we have the bottom layer right in the middle. Now we need to merge this down again, but before you do that, this is very important because it won't work if you don't do this. Go to this background layer and click on the little padlock to unlock it. So it's unlocked. Now click on that middle layer again. Now merge it down by again hitting Command or Control E on your keyboard. Now if I get the Move tool and I move it around, you can see it's moving around fine. I'm messing it up. Hold the Shift key in if it helps. And you can see there's no seam anywhere, and it flows perfectly. Now put it back so that it's all the way to the left. Like this part's all the way, goes off to the left, I should say. All right, now we're actually ready to do the animation part. So we're going to turn the layer with the model back on. To do that, we need to get a video timeline. To do that, go up to Window and then down to Timeline. Turn that on and we have a video timeline. Now in the middle of video timeline, you'll see a little drop down. You'll have 2 options, create video timeline or create frame animation. You're going to want to use the first one, create video timeline. And once it is there, just click right on the 3 words, create video timeline. And when you click on it, it will populate the timeline with our 2 layers. You can see the top layer is the model and the bottom layer are the clouds. Now, we need to create this animation, and to do that, we're going to create 2 keyframes. To create the keyframes, first of all, make sure the playhead, this is called the playhead right here. So as we're playing through, and I should mention, by default, Photoshop will give you a 5-second video. 5 seconds is perfect for what we're doing, so we do not need to change the length of the video at all. 5 seconds is perfect. Make sure the playhead is at the far left. Then go to layer 0. This is the cloud layer. Make sure that you're clicked on that and click this little arrow to roll it open. And you'll see that we could create 3 different types of keyframes: a position keyframe, an opacity keyframe, or a style keyframe. We're going to create this position keyframe. So with the playhead again, far left, just click on the little stopwatch And you'll notice that a little diamond got added here. That is our first keyframe. Now what we need to do is create the second keyframe. That's going to be at the very end. So we're going to take the playhead and move it all the way to the right, so it won't go any further. And to create the second keyframe, we don't have to click anything down here. What we need to do is just move the sky to where it's going to end up, which is to the extreme right. Now, you don't have to be smooth about this. You can hold the Shift key in again. As you click, make sure you do have the Move tool, hit the V key, and then click and just start moving it to the right. And you can do it in pieces. It doesn't matter. You could go too far. Just make sure you just bring it right so it goes right there. All right, now you'll notice Photoshop automatically put that second keyframe here. We're actually ready to play this. What I recommend you do before you start playing it for the first time is go to this little gear icon. Make sure resolution is at 50% and loop playback is at checked on, so it'll loop. We're doing that only, it's not going to affect the output at all. It's just so that it plays smoother inside of Photoshop when I hit the play button right here. And you'll notice the clouds are moving now left to right. And when it reaches the end, it will loop it back around and start over again. That's it. That's it. You created it. Now we need to save it. So we'll click this little stop button, put our playhead back to the beginning. Now you could save it as a video file. It's an MP4 file. And or you could save it as a GIF. I'm going to show you how to do both. Let's do the video file first. To do that, go to these 4 lines right here, click there, and go down to Render Video. When you do, eventually a Render Video dialog box will appear and you'll have some options there. Location and name, I'm going to keep window woman in victory.mp4 to my desktop. These are default settings, Adobe Media Encoder, that's fine, everything here. Now, if you didn't resize it and you have 9,504 by whatever the height was, and you click render, it's probably going to tell you that it's too large to be rendered. You can resize it here, but the problem here is the width and height aren't tied into one another. So if you change the 9,504 to 2,000, it won't automatically put 1333 over here. So that's why it's easier, and I recommend that you change the size of the image ahead of time like we did. So we have it there. Going to want to use this frame rate of 30. Everything's fine. These are all default settings then after that. All right, so we're just going to click render. And it will take a second to render. And when it does, it will be on our desktop as an MP4 file. Now, the thing about video files is they won't loop. So the GIF will loop. So I'll go and I'll show it to you. Here's the MP4 file, and I'll just double click on it. So it will open up in QuickTime Player, and I'm going to click the play button, and you'll see that it plays perfectly. And then when it reaches the end, it stops. And that's just normal behavior for a video. Now let's create that GIF. But actually, before we do that, I do recommend you save your work at this point, because if I create a GIF with even a resolution or width of 2,000, it's going to take forever to actually bring up the dialog box for the GIF and then to create the GIF. And then the GIF's going to be very large, going to take up a lot of disk space. So we're going to resize it. But I'd like to resize it while it's at 2,000, or I'd like to save it while it's at 2,000 pixels instead of saving it when I make it a lot smaller. So we're going to save it at this point. So go up to File. Hopefully that makes sense. We'll go to Save As, and we're going to save it as the same name, Woman in Victory. It's going to be a Photoshop file. That's what we want. I'll save it to the desktop, click Save. All right, no big deal there. Now we're just saved our work. Fine. Now to create the GIF, again, I recommend you resize it. You could try to create the huge GIF, but it will take a lot of time. I'm just warning you. All right, so what we're going to do is we're again going to go up to Image, down to Image Size, and this time the width, I'll make it 600. Even that might be a little big, but 600, usually GIFs aren't that large. So we're going to go OK. All right, so you can see it's a lot smaller now. We could fit it to screen by hitting Command or Control 0, Command or Control minus to make it a bit smaller so it looks a little better. All right, now let's create that GIF. To do that, go up to File, then down to Export, and then down to Save for Web Legacy. Click on that. When you do, and you'll see how it's taken a little while for that dialog box to come up. If I didn't resize this from 2,000 to 600, This would take actually a couple minutes for this box to come up. And then once you save it, it would take several minutes to save. So that's another reason why you may want to make it a little smaller before you create your GIF. Now, what you need to do is go over on the right-hand side, make sure you're saving it as a GIF. Oh, if you look over here, it's going to show you the size. Right now, it will be 13.84 megabytes. It's not too big. Go to colors. Maximum is 256. If it is too large, like you are saving in a full resolution, but it's really, really big, you could try to go, I recommend not going lower than 64, but I'm going to leave it at 256. The other settings here are all default settings. Again, you could probably screenshot this at this point if you want to just make a note of them. Image size, you can. If you had 2000, I didn't resize it. I could resize it here, but it takes forever. It would spin around here forever to resize. So I do recommend you do it before you bring up this dialog box. You do resizing ahead of time. Now, this is the only other important option, looping options. Make sure it's forever. So just do that. Don't click done, but instead click save. All right. And it's going to ask you where. We're going to save it to the desktop and click save. Now, it's going to do the spinning wheel. It's going to take a little while, but not too long. But if I had the 9,504 pixel width, it would take forever to save. All right. So that saved it. And let's see it. Here's our GIF right here. And it's going to be smaller, obviously, than the 2000 pixel one, but this one will loop and this will play forever until I close it down. So you can see that's our animated photo, and that's how you animate a photo in Photoshop. Now, again, if you purchased or are going to purchase my Photoshop course, it's called Photoshop Unleashed. I'm adding this exact video to that course and the file, so you can download the file and work along at home. Thank you, everyone who watches my videos. I really do appreciate it. Talk to you guys soon.